Well, hello everyone. I thought I would take some time this afternoon to film a short tutorial about the burrito method for assembling the singer's mask. I'll be working with version 3 of the mask, and it won't be a full tutorial from beginning to end. I'm just going to be explaining a specific part of the assembly of the mask. So you'll have version 3 of the mask already prepared. The top piece will already be assembled with the nose wire and everything, the casing for that. Same thing for the bottom part. It's assembled at the chin area and also a bit of stay stitching at the part that will connect to the front of the mask. Where things are a bit different, when this starts to get a little different, is that you will have assembled a little bit of the front part. So you will have assembled your interfacing to your good fabric, and you would have prepared your zip tie casings and so on. I haven't actually done this on this piece, I'm just going a little quickly, but you would have had your interfacing and your fabric portion sewn together, but the other piece will be separate. So now that you have these 4 pieces ready to go, I'm going to zoom in the camera and we're going to start assembling the mask. So we'll take the top piece of the mask and put the right side, so the side that will be visible from the outside, that right side to the single piece of the front of the mask. So right sides together will line up the two notches, the 2 center notches. And then just like the tutorial of version 3, we'll line up the sides to the notches on the side of the front and pin that in place, and do the same on the other side, lining up the edge with the notch. And just pin that in place. And then just ease the curve into the straight part of the front of the mask, and just find your middle there and put a pin. Go to the other side again, ease that in and find your middle and just pin that in place. And then just keep adding a few extra pins just to make sure that that's all eased into place. The next step is to take the other piece of the front of the mask, and now this is going to be the right side of the inside of the mask, and so we'll put right sides together, making sure you're using the correct direction. So the notches here that have been designed for the top part of the mask. So we'll line up our notches here again and line that up together, and then you'll pin that in place. And what you can do, so that you don't have too many pins, is you can take the original pin out, because now everything is nice and secure. And then you will line up the edges of the top once again with the front of the mask, lining up with the notches. Put a pin through that. If you have too many pins, you can take that extra pin out. And then do the same on the other side. And then you'll repeat. You'll do the same thing. You'll be easing that section of the front of the mask all along the curved edge, pinning as you go. And once all of that is done, we'll take it to the machine and sew that seam. Okay, so now I have sewn the whole edge, and I'm going to flip that over so just so you get a bit of a preview of what this is starting to look like. So this is the top of the mask, the front, and on the inside of the mask you can see that there are no raw edges. The next step of assembly is the reason why we call it the burrito method. So we're going to open that up again with the wrong sides facing out, and what we have to do is roll in the top of the mask again, making sure that it's nicely sandwiched. But we also have to sandwich in the bottom part of the mask. Make sure we have our outside of the mask, the good side, towards the good side of the front of the mask, and we're going to line up our notches together and pin that in place. And then we're going to do the same thing we did with the top of the mask, lining up the edges with the notches and pin that in place. Do that on the other side, lining up the edges with the notches, pinning that in place, finding a good center point to pin again, and we'll pin that in place. Do that again on the other side, just like we did with the top piece, and pin that in place. And then, once we have a few pins in place, we're just going to make sure that's nicely tucked away, and we're going to flip the other side of the front of the mask and line up, find our center notches and line those up, and we'll pin that in place. Just make sure that you're not pinning any more than you need to pin. It has to be just the edges. Make sure you keep the other parts of the masks tucked inside. And then do the same, lining up the edges with the side notches and pin that in place. And of course you can remove any extra pins, you can remove those. And fix that along the way. Find a center point again and just pin that in place. And just keep an eye on your edges. Just make sure you're not losing any edges on the inside of your mask. Just make sure everything is nicely eased into place. So we carry on pinning all along. And this is why we call it the burrito method, because everything is rolled up inside just like a burrito. So I'm just going to finish up my pinning, and then I'll take it to the machine and I will sew that seam in place. Now I've sewn both sides of the mask. Everything is rolled neatly inside, and now's the time for the big reveal. And you just flip that right side out. It's surprising how much fabric can fit in that little roll. And there you have the top of your mask, the bottom of the mask. Here's the outside and the inside, and there are no raw seam edges showing. A final step that you can do is to top stitch, just to keep your seam edges nice and flat. You can take this to the machine and top stitch the edge, and it'll give it a really nice finish. Well, there you have it, the burrito method for assembling the mask. And you can see that the top stitching that I did, you can see it in the white thread. Of course, you would find a matching thread. It gives it a really nice finish, and you don't have to worry too much about ironing everything into place. If you don't want to do zip ties, perhaps you don't want to have the interfacing in the middle and you just want 2 layers of a good quality cotton, you could skip the zip ties and insert, some people have done this on the Facebook group, they've taken a sheet of that plastic canvas that is used for crafts where children do petit point, and they'll just cut that to size and slip that through. And what I did the other day is I used horsehair. And horsehair is used in dressmaking. It's used to give shape to the bottom of a skirt, for instance. Well, this is really a good choice, although it's a bit more expensive. But if you're just doing one mask for yourself or a few masks, it doesn't make a huge difference. But on 30 masks or 100 masks, then it does add up. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that even though this is plastic on the end, it's actually quite sharp. So what I did for the mask I made with the horsehair is I used a stiff piece of interfacing, which I folded in half, and I sewed that to the end of the horsehair, and that just prevents the little spikes of the plastic from poking through. So what you would do, and what's really fun with horsehair, is that it can be shaped to the width that you would want. So you would essentially just smush that, and you could then slip that through the front part, and it actually holds up really well, and of course it's breathable. It doesn't add another layer of bulk to the mask, so it gives you more options for the kinds of fabrics you use, and then you can skip the interfacing part of the mask. So that's it. I'd love to hear your comments, and of course I will leave links to the pattern and anything else, the Facebook page that might be useful. I'll leave that in the description box that is below the video. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you find this useful, and until next time, bye.